Hey guys, this is X, and welcome to the first chapter of Frost Tanking 101. Before I continue, I'd like to stress that this video and the other videos in this series contain information that is relevant and current as of their creation dates, and as of World of Warcraft patch 3.3.2. Frost tanking and tanking in general is a topic that is frequently debated, researched, and discussed amongst the World of Warcraft community, and it is constantly changing. The information I provide in the Frost Tanking 101 series is not to be taken as the supreme authority in frost tanking. Rather, I'll show you how I do things as a Death Knight tank in Heroics and give you some good practices, and then I'll leave you room for you to grow into your own style. In this chapter, we'll discuss ability rotation, positioning of your Death and Decay spell, and steering your character. These are the basics of the Death Knight tank, so before we cover anything else, you'll need to know these. But first, let's briefly discuss talent points. Building a frost tanking spec is easy if you're looking up a cookie cutter build on the web, or if you look up a well-known frost tank on your server in the armory and copy that person's spec. I strongly discourage you from doing either of these things. Your playstyle is your own, and your spec should complement how you play. When you tank using someone else's build, it's like getting into the driver's seat of that person's car and finding the seat is too far back. Sure, you'll be able to get to your destination in their car, but if you don't adjust the seat to fit you, you won't be comfortable, and it could affect your driving. Building specs for any class is the same way. I strongly suggest you say to yourself, forget what everyone else thinks, I'm going to build a spec that's effective and fun for me. Having said that, I will now point out which talents I think are crucial to a frost tanking spec. Naturally, you will want to take up the first 5 points in each of the definitive tanking talents, Blade Barrier, Toughness, and Anticipation. Annihilation is important because you will be using Obliterate frequently. To help maintain AoE threat, I recommend Killing Machine and Glacier Rot. For survivability, pick up Frigid Dreadplate and Improved Frost Presence. Howling Blast is key to any frost tanking spec. It can be used creatively in many instances, and it generates AoE threat. If you would like to dual wield tank like I do, Nerves of Cold Steel and Threat of the Sarian are essential. Naturally, if you're not dual wield tanking in your frost spec, leave these out. I like to pull Heroics very quickly, so I take up Morbidity to make sure Death and Decay is always ready for the next pull. Aside from these noteworthy talents, feel free to build a spec to your own liking. Remember, you don't play quite the same as someone else plays, so your talents should be a reflection of you. Now let's talk about rotation. Rotation is the order that you use your abilities in any given fight. Against any pool that has more than one mob, you will typically want to start off with the Death and Decay. This builds up initial threat on these mobs, and allows your DPS to begin doing damage without getting hurt. Follow up with an Icy Touch, and then a Plague Strike, and then finally cast Pestilence. Now all of your runes are on cooldown, but as you can see, Rune Strike becomes available periodically, and you should be ready to hit that when it becomes available. You can also cast Horn of Winter to generate some extra runic power. When Howling Blast becomes available, cast that, and if you still need to continue building threat, you can follow up with a Blood Boil. After this, the fight becomes a little more freeform, and you can begin spamming other abilities, like Obliterate. Obliterate is an important ability to use at some point during a fight, because it could give you a free Howling Blast, which helps generate more threat and take the pull down faster. Against any single target, Death and Decay may not be necessary, so you can open up with an Icy Touch, follow that with a Plague Strike, and then you can use Blood Strike 2 times. Once you've done that, follow up with an Obliterate, and then you've generated enough runic power to spend on a Frost Strike and on Rune Strikes. Continue to use Blood Strike and Obliterate as they become available, and refresh your diseases when necessary. Death and Decay positioning is also an important part of tanking as a Death Knight. I like to cast my Death and Decay ahead of myself as I approach a group of mobs, and then stand at the edge of the spell's radius. This usually causes the mobs to run through my Death and Decay so that they are taking damage and I am building threat before they even had a chance to lay a hand on me. Also, creative use of Death and Decay will help keep your party alive. Notice here that I don't cast Death and Decay directly at these mobs, because these mobs I have to keep moving. Instead, I cast my Death and Decay where I know the mobs will be in just a moment, and then I pull them through that to deal damage and generate threat. Getting mobs to stand where you want them is called mob positioning, and steering your character is paramount to achieving this. One of your goals in every pool should be to tank the mobs so that they are facing away from your party, and so that no mobs are behind you. If mobs are behind you, you cannot parry or dodge any of their attacks. So the damage you take when mobs are behind you is much more dreadful than if you had those mobs in front of you. While tanking, you should try to never strafe. Strafing while tanking causes the mobs to react unpredictably, and it makes them difficult to position. Instead, you should steer left and then pull back. Using your mouse, hold down your right-click button and steer your character to the left. This will probably put your back to a few mobs for a second or two, but successfully positioning them is worth it. You can see that after I've pulled back, the mobs are turned to face me, and there are none behind me. In this position, I am helping my healer by minimizing the damage I take, and my DPS has an easy time attacking the mobs from behind. These are the fundamentals of Death Knight tanking, and with them stated, I will bring Chapter 1 to a close. Chapters 2 and 3 will cover how you can use your abilities in creative and dynamic ways to improve your tanking, and to make tanking lots more fun. As a bonus, the creative uses of your abilities that I'll be covering in Chapters 2 and 3 tend to look impressive, so you can be one of those tanks that makes tanking look good. I hope you've enjoyed Chapter 1 of Frost Tanking 101. Until next time guys, go out and have fun, and cheers!